Hi everyone, today we're looking at Portal, the Uncooperative cake acquisition game. I'm not making this up, this is what's written on the box. Obviously, this game is inspired by Valve's famous video game series. In fact, Valve is in partnership with Cryptozoic in the development of this game. Before explaining all the game mechanic and tell you how you can get some delicious cake, let me introduce you to a family that is obviously spending good quality time around the table. Just like in the video game series, Portal, the board game, puts us in the middle of Aperture Science labs where many experiments are made on time and space. The lab is made up of several chambers randomly assembled at the beginning of the game. Each chamber is represented by a double-sided tile. Though the setup is totally random, the chambers must still be assembled in 3 rows of 5. The 2 emblematic portals are placed on these 2 chambers on the far right side of the lab, also called the old edge of the laboratory. The new edge of the lab is on the other side, all the way to the left. Why old and why new? Simply because the chambers will move throughout the game just like if they were on a conveyor belt. Which should sound familiar to all the gamers who played the first Portal video games all the way through the end. At the beginning of the game, every player will get some test subjects of the color of his choice. These subjects will be placed accordingly, 1 in the top chamber, 2 in the middle chamber, and 1 in the bottom one. The 4 remaining subjects will stay in front of the player, as well as its 8 slices of cake. And if you know the Portal series, you know how important the cake is. In fact, in the board game, the player with the most slices still in the lab at the end of the game will be the winner. On his or her turn, each player will follow a sequence of 4 actions. The first one of these actions is totally optional. The player can decide if he or she wants to play different cards, but since no one has cards at the beginning of the game, let's just jump straight to the second action. We'll come back later to the card phase, which will make a lot more sense to you once you know the gist of the game. The second action is mandatory and lets player move their test subjects in the lab. During a turn, a player can only make one single move, but that move can include moving one or all of the subjects from one chamber to an adjacent room. For instance, it is legal to move this subject to this or to this chamber. It is also legal to move just one or both of these test subjects to any of the adjacent chamber, but if they move, they have to move to the same chamber. If the player decides to only move a single test subject, he'll earn a bonus. He can either draw a card or get a free new test subject that will be directly delivered at the new edge of the lab. The third action is also mandatory. The player needs to activate one of the 3 test chambers from the old edge of the lab. To do so, he'll place the GLaDOS token on the chosen chamber. The chamber will be activated, then recycled during the 4th action. Let's first see how to activate the chamber. If no test subjects are in the room during the activation, nothing happens. On the other hand, if one or several subjects are present in the chamber, the player with the most subjects will receive some bonuses according to the symbols on the wall. For instance, as a bonus, it is possible to get some free test subjects which will be delivered on the new edge of the lab. The player can decide to place them all on the same tile or to spread them in different chambers. It is also possible to get as many cards as there are Aperture logos on the wall. Players have a hand limit of 3 cards though, and if a player already has 3 cards, he cannot draw new ones. A player can also get some cake slices while activating a chamber. Just like the test subjects, the cake slices will be delivered in the new edge of the lab. Sometimes the activated chamber shows the companion cube logo. If that's the case, the player can place or move this lovely cube figurine to one of the chamber. When this chamber will be activated, all the test subjects present will be distracted by the cube and no one will get a bonus. Finally, the last logo found on the chamber shows a turret. The first time this logo is activated, the player will place the turret figurine in one of the 3 new chambers of the lab, and all the test subjects in this room are given back to their respective owner. On the other hand, all the cake slices and the potential portals will stay in this chamber. Of course, no one can now enter this particular room and everyone will have to wait that the turret is moved, either by playing a card or by activating a chamber with the specific logo. Now that the chamber has been activated, the player can trigger the 4th and the last action on his turn, which is to recycle this chamber. GLaDOS is taken off the board, the player grabs the chamber tile, flips it, and places it on the new edge of the lab. It is now a brand new chamber with different icons on its walls, which will be in play once the chamber reaches the old edge and is being activated. If one of the portals, the companion cube or the turret is in the chamber while it is being recycled, they just reappear in the new chamber. Now, if test subjects are present in the chamber during the recycle, they are given back to their owner. Cake slices, for their part, are incinerated and removed from the game. So players will have to make sure not to have too many burnt slices if they want to win the game with the most slices in the lab. Thankfully, players can save their slices by carrying them from chamber to chamber when they move their test subjects. Each subject can grab a piece of cake, no matter its color, to move it to an adjacent chamber. Here, the red player grabs the blue cake and moves it to an adjacent room right before activating and recycling this chamber, which will destroy the cake. Let's now come back to the first action and talk about the cards a player can play at the start of the turn. Let me remind you that cards can be obtained either by moving a single test subject or by activating specific chambers. Cards are generally different, but they all share a common design. Their front will mention a specific power here in black and white, while their back will show a character in color and mention a rule breaker. When a player plays a card, he or she will benefit from the special power listed on the front. Here, the excursion funnel let the player move several test subjects toward the old edge of the lab. The card will then be discarded like so to show the character on its back, which will then modify the rules for everyone. So players will have to take into account both sides of the card if they want to take advantage of the special power listed on its front without getting penalized by the constraints dictated by the character's side. The Aperture special powers are many and varied. For example, there's a card that lets you move any test subject to an adjacent chamber. Another one allows you to destroy a test subject, the turret or the companion cube. Yet another card lets you move the turret or incinerate a slice of cake from a player with more cake in the lab than you, and so on. But one must also consider the back of the card, which will always break the rules one way or another. Many characters are present in the game. To cite just a couple, if Whitley is visible, the bonuses from an activated chamber will go to the player with the least test subjects in the room and not to the player with the most like usual. Shell, for her part, will let a player move a portal token to any chamber at the start of a turn. And speaking of that, the portals work exactly like in the video game. Players can then move from one to another, from the blue portal to the orange, or from the orange to the blue one, just like if the two chambers were next to each other. Players can also move the two portal tokens by discarding any Aperture card without using the special power. The tokens can be placed anywhere except on one of the three chambers from the old edge. Let's just place the blue one here. To sum up, a player starts the turn by deciding if he wants to play any of his cards to either move the portal tokens around or to take advantage of special powers, but beware, the back of the cards with the characters will modify the rules until they are covered by another card. After that, the player will have to move some test subjects in the lab, then finally he will have to activate and recycle a room from the old edge of the laboratory. The game keeps on until a player has no more slices of cake, which means that all his cake has been incinerated, or until a player doesn't have any more test subjects in the lab. In both cases, the player with the most slices of cake still present in the lab at that time wins the game. And here you have it. Now you know how to play Portal, the Uncooperative cake acquisition game. So have fun, and I'll see you in another episode with another board game on the table. Take care.